Okay, everyone. So look, I will kick off. This is interesting for me now because this is slightly different to what I normally do with the webinar. So to everyone that has joined us so far, welcome to our first virtual meeting formatted. It's not a webinar this evening, as you can see. We've invited you in. This is going to be a more interactive session, and so hopefully that's going to be something that works for you, and maybe we'll do more of them in the future. Today we have Elif joining us to speak about the upcoming changes to the PMP exam, and we're also going to take the opportunity to give you a little bit of an update and hopefully answer any questions you might have on gathering PDUs, so how to earn them, how to report them. So Elif, as you can see, you guys might know her already from some of the webinars we've run. She is the Director of Professional Development here with the Ireland Chapter of the PMI. She's also a Project Management Consultant, and supporting her today is Jackie. She's our Vice President of the Ireland Chapter of PMI. So
you better say my second name, Katrina, because it's the two Jackies.
This is Jackie Fagan. To be very clear, that is a good tip. Thank you. Jackie Glynn is our President and Jackie Fagan is our Vice President. So the lady in waiting, which we shall call her.
Oh my God, it sounds like the crown.
Now, guys, before I hand over to Elif and Jackie, I just want to say a quick word to you. So we can't be together in the same room, but we're going to try as best as possible to simulate that experience. There's going to be no Menti poll this evening. We're running this as a virtual event. We're going to try and see if the interaction works. You can ask questions in the chat. There'll be an opportunity for you to show your video if you're comfortable doing that. You don't have to do that. And there'll be an opportunity for you to even ask questions to speak to myself and to Elif and Jackie. So I have a few questions for you, or a few favors to ask of you. Please enter your full name. You can actually now hover over your own name and change it. So if you came in as a phone number, or if you came in as an abbreviation, please do have a look and see if you can change that. Check that your microphone is on mute while you're listening, and it's up to you how you feel comfortable with your video on or off. That's absolutely fine. We're going to go through a number of sections in this evening's meeting. They're going to be covered by Elif and Jackie, so they're going to hand over and back to each other. We're going to try and keep it 10 minutes to each session with a Q&A after each session. Looking forward to keeping a little bit of time at the end for a wrap up, a Q&A if we have the time to do that. So ask your questions while you get the opportunity. Essentially, if we can't answer a question, if it's too difficult, if we don't know the answer, we will absolutely take it away and we'll do a follow-up as we normally do post-event. So that's it from me. I will be controlling the slides, so if there's a problem with the slides, you can hold yours truly responsible. So Elif, thank you very much for running this evening, and I'm going to hand over to you now as the host.
Thank you very much, Katrina, and hi everyone. My name is Elif. As Katrina mentioned, I'm the Director of Professional Development, and welcome to today's webinar. We have an information-packed agenda for you today, and we really hope that you find today's session beneficial. So let's have a look at today's agenda. So we're going to start with an overview of the PMI certifications, and then look at some of the online exam options we have. Following that, Jackie is going to take us through the PMP exam changes and the PMBOK 7th edition. And afterwards, I'm going to take you through how to maintain your PMI certification and earning and reporting PDUs. So as Katrina mentioned, we have a dedicated Q&A at the end of the session, but we will also do a quick 5-minute Q&A after every section. So if you have any questions, please feel free to type it in the chat so we can answer it. Okay, so let's kick off our session. So we're going to start with an overview of the PMI certifications. So the first certification we have here is CAPM. And CAPM is a Certified Associate in Project Management. So basically, this is a certification that demonstrates that the individual has the fundamental understanding of the project management. So it's a really good starting point for someone who maybe has recently joined the project management profession, or someone who has a limited experience in this area, as there's no requirement for project management experience for this, so that's why it will be a good introductory certification. So in terms of the requirements, you need to have a secondary school degree, so that's the high school diploma, and you need to have 23 hours of project management education. So that education requirement there can be fulfilled through either one of the trainings from PMI's registered education providers, or it could be any training by any academic institution, for example, or any other training providers, as long as it's on project management. And if you think that this certification might be of interest to you, there are some really good resources on the PMI.org website. On the right-hand side, you can see it. There is a really good number of tips that you can have a look, resources on how to prepare, and FAQs that might be helpful in terms of preparation. You can also download the exam content from the website. You can have a look at the sample questions, and also there's a handbook for that, which will take you through from the application process through the exam, and also how to maintain your certification. So there's some really good resources, and I would encourage you to have a look at that if you're interested in the CAPM certification. Okay, then moving on to our second certification we have here is PMP. So this is our most commonly known certification. It's the gold standard of project management certification, and it's widely recognized project management certification throughout the world, and it's a good validation that the individual has the capabilities and the competence to perform in the project manager role in terms of leading and directing projects. So in terms of the requirements for PMP, if you have a 4-year degree, so if you're graduated from a 4-year university, a bachelor's degree, then you will need 36 months of project management experience, as well as 35 hours of project management training. And if you don't have that 4-year degree, instead, if you have a high school, a secondary school diploma, then you will need 60 months of project management experience and 35 hours of project management training. And in terms of the project management experience here, it's important to highlight that it has to be experience in a professional setting. For example, if you are project managing a wedding, or if you have any home improvement project, which many of us might have some going on at this in lockdown thing. So those unfortunately won't count for this. So it has to be in a professional setting in terms of that project management experience. And also making sure that when you're entering those months, that there is no overlap, and if there is overlap, making sure that you only count one towards the total. Okay, then if we move on to our next slide. Then if you're interested in applying for PMP, in terms of the information you would need to have in hand for the project management experience, you will need to provide a brief description of the project, where you worked, what was your role and responsibility, as well as the deliverables in those projects, and the duration of the projects. And in terms of the training, then you would need to have information for the institutions attended, so which institution provided that training, the courses completed, as well as qualifying hours. So qualifying hours in the sense, for example, if you, let's say you applied, you took a training on management, and let's say if only 2 hours of that training was specifically on project management, then only you can count those 2 hours rather than the entire duration. So the part that is directly relevant to project management will count towards the overall requirements. And if you are interested in PMP, so there is a number of resources on the website as well. In terms of the application, you can have a detailed look on the requirements. There is a handbook as well, which covers from application to exam to maintaining the certification. There's also a very useful application pointer, so an application checklist on PMI website, which is a really good checklist, self-assessment that you can do on your own before you submit the application, just making sure that you have the right and the correct information. And also on the exam content, you can have a look at the exam content, the guidelines, any tips and FAQs, which is all on the website as well. And the last section on maintaining the certification we will cover later on in today's agenda. Okay, then if we move on to our next certifications. So there are additional of 6 PMI certifications, and these are on specific areas. So, for example, we have a professional in business analysis certification. Similarly, there's a program management, a portfolio management, a risk management professional, as well as a scheduling professional, and also the project management ready, which is the newest certification that was introduced, aiming, targeting at the high school or secondary school level students. So if you're interested in any of those certifications, there's further information on the website, and depending on your level of experience and the area that you would like to specialize in, these certifications could be a really good fit for you. And similarly, all the detailed information are on website, and you can see the link there at the bottom as well if you're interested in these certifications. Then if we move on to our next slide, so here we have is the overview of the Agile certifications. As Agile is highly growing within the organizations, and it's getting more and more common between different industries and organizations, the Agile certifications is growing as well, and it's one of the fastest growing areas for PMI as well. And there are, at the moment, there are 5 certifications that PMI offers. So the first one is the PMI ACP certification, which is the Agile Certified Practitioner. So this is a good certification for someone who has experience in Agile, and it's a good certification to validate that the individual has applied experience in Agile principles and Agile approaches as part of an Agile team. So in terms of the prerequisites for the certifications, you need to have your secondary school degree. On top of that, you will need 21 contact hours of training, and specifically on Agile practices. In addition, you need to have 12 months of general project management experience. And if you have a PMP or a program management professional, this will satisfy this requirement. And finally, you will need 8 months of Agile project experience within the last 3 years. So as I said, this is a really good certification for someone who is already experienced in Agile and looking to validate and build their professional development. And then at the bottom, we have the second certification, which is on Discipline Agile Scrum Master. So this is an introductory certification for Discipline Agile, and it covers that the individual has the fundamental understanding of the different Agile and Lean approaches, as well as having an understanding of the Discipline Agile toolkit and how to choose and customize that for that situation. So as I mentioned, there's no previous Agile experience, so this will be a really good one if you're looking to get more experience and develop and professional development in Agile space. But if you don't have the required experience, this will be a really good starting point, because the only requirement for that is that you need to attend a 2-day training from a Discipline Agile partner. And you can find the list on PMI.org website for that as well. Then if we move on to our next slide, here we have the other 3 Agile certifications. So these will be introduced in the next coming months. And these are a Senior Scrum Master, the Agile Coach, and the Value Stream Consultant. So depending on your experience level and also the area you would like to more specialize in, these certifications could be a good fit for you as well. And similarly, so there's more information in terms of the requirements for each of these certifications, and the content and how to apply it it's all on PMI.org as well, if this is an area that you might be interested in. Then if we move on to our next section, so we have done the overview for the different certifications. So for some of those certifications, it's possible to take the exam online, which could be very practical and very flexible, especially under the current circumstances. And these are PMP, CAPM, PMI ACP, and PBA certifications. So it's possible to take the exams for these certifications online. And in terms of the content, it's the same content and same questions and same quality, but it's more flexible for candidates. And there's also 24/7 options. So depending on your schedule, you can schedule it on different times of the day. The only requirement there is that you need to have a computer with a webcam. You need to have a reliable internet connection and also a quiet space where you will be uninterrupted during for the duration of your exam. So if this is something that you might be interested in, there are some FAQs on the website, and which might cover some of the questions you might already have. These are on scheduling or some of the logistics and the technology, for example, and the exam experience and security as well. And if you are interested in this, it's also possible to do a quick system test, and you can also run a simulation from the PMI.org link as well, so that you can just make sure that you have the necessary technology and everything's working before you apply for an online exam option. Okay, so this was the end of our first section. So if there's any questions related to the certifications, we can answer them now.
I might say now this is everyone's opportunity. If you want to raise your hand, you can ask the question in chat, or you can even speak to us as well. I'm going to make a point about the proctored exam. Do prepare, because where I work, a number of people were taking proctored exams online, and the security in the company in which they worked didn't allow those particular, I'll call them applications because they were sort of browser linked. It didn't allow them to be used. So in one case they got an exception, and in another case they had to use their personal laptop. So it is worth taking Elif's advice here and preparing before you sit down on the day, because you could find out, especially if you're working on your work laptop, that it mightn't work. Elif, we do have a question from Anya. I don't know if you can, it's just to me, Anya, so I'll read it out. Which of the Agile courses is better? She has done Safe Agile Scrum Master with Agilist, but found the training to be focused on the framework rather than the practical implementation of the theory. So is AP better than Scrum Master? And I think if I go back.
Elif, do you want me to take that one, or are you okay?
So I'll start, Jackie, and then you want to have any additions? So it's depending on the experience level will be the right answer. So that discipline Agile Scrum Master, if we go back to the Agile certifications slide, Katrina, so we can see it there at this one here. So the discipline Agile Scrum Master certifications, for example, is that there's no previous Agile experience required. So this is more of an introductory level experience, but the PMI ACP is more targeted to someone who has already an Agile experience, and it covers different Agile methodologies and practices and principles as well. So, and depending on the experience level and I suppose the specialized area that you would like to focus on.
Yeah, that's right. It depends, actually. Yeah, it depends on what you're looking to achieve from the certification. In my area of expertise and doing interviews and all that type of thing, and through the industries I've looked at, when I look at a CV with PMI ACP, that gives me an understanding that they have a grounded understanding of the Agile concepts and have worked in the Agile industry. It depends what you want to get out of it. As Elif says, if you want to go down the road of Scrum and just totally get involved in that, then that's the one for you. But the ACP, in terms of other industries looking at your CV, would look, it's like the PMP. Well, if you have that, you have a grounding in project management. Does that help?
Yeah, it does. Thank you.
No problem. Katrina, I'd just be interested if we have anyone on the call that's never done any PMI exams at all, because this could be quite daunting for them. That, you know, you can start from the bottom. You can start at the CAPM, which is the introduction one, or the student introduction one, and in the introduction one for the Agile. So don't be daunted by knowing. I just see something popped up there about, you know, so many qualifications.
Before, sorry.
Yeah.
One question from Glenn, and then Merv has put his hand up, so Merv's going to try and ask a question as well. But Glenn wants to know, can you still do an exam in the exam centre during level 3 lockdown measures? I don't know the answer to that.
It depends on where you are. It wouldn't be considered in Ireland. I would suggest the answer is no. But when I'm going to go into it from January, most of the PMI exams are going to be online, with the exception of the Agile ones, but that is going towards the online. We're just not there with the Agile exams yet. So really is on a country by country basis what the restrictions are.
Okay, well look, we'll get one more question in from Merv before we go on to the next. Merv is actually joining us from the UK chapter. So Merv, I'm just going to ask you to unmute there, so let's see if you can actually ask the question.
Yeah, thanks so much, Katrina.
Welcome.
Thank you. I noticed that I only discovered the other day that the statistics are published on our PMI UK website, which is really interesting. And when I started looking at, for example, 55% of members have the PMP, so it's really quite high. But then I have a personal interest in both programs and portfolios, and the numbers on those are, you know, they're in the low tens, about 1% of the PMP. Is there any obvious reason for that, and any plans to?
Yeah, I think it was the PMP came out first, right? So every man and his dog wanted to have the PMP because, and it's one of the hard ones to get. But then as PMI started to grow, we understood that, well, it's not just project management, there's portfolio and there's program management. I think they have to mature a bit in terms of their credibility in the industries. So it's only if someone has a passion in it. I know I see Jackie Morton, our president's on board, has just joined us. I know Jackie had gone to doing it, and I know I had started looking at it. The portfolio, the program portfolio management, like the information in it is second to none. So if you have an interest in it, I would absolutely, even if you're only doing the training for it and don't do the course, but if you're doing the training, you might as well do the exam. But the knowledge that's in there is absolutely exceptional.
Well, we have a Merv, a similar situation. You can all also go to the Ireland Chapter website. If you scroll down, you will also see our membership statistics. So we've got just under 1,600 members, of which 933 are PMP certified. But if I look at PgMP, we've only got 18. ACP is really coming up now. There's 49 already. So Agile is definitely the flavour of the month. Whereas Merv, I think that in the Ireland Chapter, we have a similar background to yourselves, where it's the PMP seems to be the most popular one for sure.
Katrina?
Yes.
Katrina, it's Jackie.
Hey, Jackie.
Lynn, how you doing? Hi, everybody. Just to the portfolio point, Merv, I think the challenge is the portfolio management qualification is a great qualification. The content, as Jackie said, is really second to none if you're in a portfolio job. It's just that I don't think there is a huge segment of industry that labels them the jobs portfolio management, so that people understand that it's something they can learn more about. I know from my experience of talking to people who haven't done a proper portfolio enterprise job, is that I've met lots of people who don't have it in the name of their title, but they're probably doing the majority of the job, but then they just don't know that that's what it's called, and therefore they don't see a professional education piece as something that's an option for them. That's the way I see it, you know. And I suppose they're not as, the portfolio management space is kind of, I suppose, a little bit less densely populated from a job market perspective in Ireland, most definitely.
Yeah,
Thanks, Jackie.
okay.
I'm going to move the guys on now, so and try and keep us on time. We thought that 90 minutes might be too much for this. We thought we'd try and keep it to the hour. So let's see how we go. So Jackie, I think I'm handing to you now.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah.
The changes. Okay.
So so the next section is that I'm going to go through, guys, is around the exam changes. So most of you should be aware. If not, it may come to a shock if you're looking at the exam on the 2nd of January. From the 2nd of January onwards, the whole way the PMP exam is changing, and is changing radically. And this is probably the biggest change it has had, like they say, in the last 20 years. But definitely it's a big change, and it's a big mindset change for us. And one of the biggest ones is Currently, if you remember any of those that have painstakingly done the PMP in the last 15, 20 years, 5 years, whatever, we have our 5 domains. We go from initiation all the way through into close. And if you're working in an industry, you may have used that methodology and tweaked it a bit, having different sections, but basically following those 5 phases. We're now moving in line with the times and keeping PMI relevant and seeing how our industries have changed and how everything is changing within the world. We are now looking at the new exam format that goes across 3 domains. It's people, processes, and business environment. And I always think of these as, if you ever did any short skills training or any training about business process or anything, you'd have the 3 triangles or 3 circles, sorry, and they would be all interlinked. And the other thing to notice, so that's the first big change. The second change is to how they the exam questions, how they divide out the exam questions. So if you look at the orange, the current exam format, which is only up to the 2nd of January, the largest percentage of that was 25%, which was on monitoring and control, followed closely by planning. But if you look at the new format, 50%, so that's half of the exam, is going to be on process, followed very closely by people. So if you recall, or if you're working in a project management environment, I always say, and I'm sure most of you be saying it anyway, 50% nearly of project management is managing people, and it's all about communication. So this is now being reflected in the exam format. A couple of other things just to call out to you that's not covered in this slide. The PMI is, while it's changing on the 2nd of January, it's still going to be on using the 6th edition of the PMBOK. And that might sound a bit contradictory, but the content is still the same in terms of having to know everything within it. One of the things that you will have to know about is Agile. Agile is a must, so you can expect to get exam questions in the PMP on Agile. The exam, they're telling us, is bigger because the domains are bigger, so there's a larger content to go through on. And Elif mentioned earlier on about the prerequisite, about the contact hours. The 35 hours are a minimum. So if you've more than that, that's great, but that's a minimum in terms of the application on it. The other thing I just want to talk about is when we talk about the exam with the domains, they talk about, and there's loads of links, guys, on these pages when you get so you don't have to keep writing all this down. There's links to all these different tips and trips in the presentation. When we talk about the domain, they talk about the domain, the task, and the enabler. So the domain is defined as the high level knowledge of the area that's essential to the practice of project management. And then the task is the underlying responsibility. So for some of the, when you go through some of the links, they give you examples of the different tasks, and then they talk about enablers, and they're examples of work associated with the task. So I have an example here. So if we look at in people, so people is the domain, the task statement will be manage conflict. The enablers would be interpret the source and stage of the conflict resolution, analyze the context for conflict resolution, and recommendation of the correct conflict resolution. So that's probably a little bit different in terms of how, whereas before they talk about, yeah, you've got this question, you've multiple choice, and you'd have an idea of where the questions would be associated with. But the domains, you may or may not know where the domain is. It's not really that easy, but they will ask you about the tasks and then the enablers associated with it. So do go on. There's one I'm just reading this from Exam Content Outline, January 2021, and it's a very good read. It sort of goes through, there's a link on it on one of the pages. It's a very good click through of what exactly you can expect from the exam itself. So if you're taking the exam before the 31st December, happy out, nothing much will change. But if you're going to taking it after the 2nd of January, absolutely could go into those 3 links. And back to something Katrina said about doing it online. And we had a couple of questions, Elif, some time ago when they went to do the online exam, you know, oh, you know, do I really, is it really that strict, and can I have the PMBOK beside me and all this type of stuff? It is, it's really as close to being in a centre as you can get, even to breaks and everything else. So don't underestimate the, you know, the seriousness of it. Like, I think it's still about 4 hours the exam is, and so it's, you know, it's a heavy lift and you have to have your full concentration. So I can't re-emphasize enough, Katrina, what you were saying about the environment and being ready and everything else. So that's, so if we can click on, so they're all good links. So the next thing I just want to talk to briefly about is the PMBOK. So while the exam is changing radically on the 2nd of January, it will still be based on the PMBOK 6th edition. So the content will be still the same. For the 7th edition then, we'll start moving away from the, you know, the body of knowledge, the 10 knowledge areas. We'll move away from the 5 phases. We'll talk about the 3 domains. So a lot of that is we talk about governing principles, and there's more agile that comes into the PMBOK. So the 7th edition, the aim of what they're trying to do with the 7th edition is try to make it a more rounded, like I know Elif will go on and talk about our triangle, but if you look at where 15, 20 years ago project management was, and we were sort of down at the bottom of the pile and doing all the tasks and the admin, the project managers have moved up in the food chain. So we're expected to have a more business and a more rounded approach and being able to bring a bit more to the table. And this is what we're trying to reflect in the PMBOK in the 7th edition. They haven't got an actual date of when that's due out. It's due out sometime, I think it's the 2nd or 3rd quarter of next year. But it will be definitely one of these reference guides, not one of these things that I am only speaking for myself, and not time I look into it, but the PMBOK 6th edition, 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 5th and 6th was one of these things that you try to consume and eat it all in to be able to get your exam. Whereas this will be more of a reference guide that you can still keep on coming back to it. Other different principles, knowledge areas and everything else, will be a lot of information in it. So I'll stop there. Don't know if I went over my time. Hopefully I did.
You're doing it, Jackie. It was Elif who slightly went over her time. I'm just saying. No, that's brilliant. And guys, we will pause now for if there is any questions on this, because there's, so like, to summarize, the exam is going to change, and I'll just go back to show you. It's going to change early next year. So if you've got your exam in before the 31st of December, you're good to go. If you haven't, it's going to change. It's still going to be based on the PMBOK that we have right now, but the questions are going to go and lean towards these domains. And if you can see here in the percentages, people and process is where it's at. So I did the exam the way Jackie's talking about, which was swallow the inputs, the tools and processes and the outputs, and you will pass that exam. And I am not ashamed to tell you that is exactly what I did. It took me a long time to do it, but I got there. But this, I mean, project management has evolved, and it is all about communication and people management and strategy. It is, you know, it's about the people side of it. So you're, I think if you have experience, you're probably going to be set up much better to pass this exam than having to read the book over and back. But I don't know if I haven't seen, oh, we have a couple of questions. So Tom, who has joined us from the UK chapter, has a couple of questions. And actually, I think we might have the answer for you here. He's asking, I'm doing the exam on the 7th of January. Where can I go for practice questions? And I think that's this link here, right? Online self-paced course. Yeah. So Tom, we will share these. I'll share this as a PDF afterwards, so you'll have that link to go into it, okay? Hopefully that helps you out. And then George has a question, with the 12 new principles in the PMBOK, will the 12 new principles in the PMBOK 7th edition replace or complement the knowledge areas in the PMBOK 6th edition? So are we talking replace?
So what they're telling us is, sorry, Katrina.
No, go.
What they're telling us is the knowledge areas will still be there, but instead of just the knowledge areas on their own, the knowledge areas will be embedded in each of those governing principles. So it'll be more like a matrix. So if you talk about risk management, you don't talk about risk management on its own. It goes across all the principles. So it'll complement the knowledge areas, but they'll just be embedded.
Okay, and we do have, and we've put it here on a note as well, the PMI org are running a number of what they're calling getting under the hood sessions on the PMBOK 7th edition. So I've started to link those into our registration page. You have to be a PMI member to join those because they're part of projectmanagement.com, but I'm putting the links directly into our registration page, which means you don't have to go searching for them on the projectmanagement.com. So whenever I see one of these come up for probably for the next year, I'll make sure we hook them up. And they are, I think the next one up is focusing on stakeholder management. So I think they're trying to go into those areas. Okay, anyone else? Oh, so Kate's telling us that the getting under the hood sessions are very good, highly recommends them. So that's good to know because got to go somewhere for our knowledge on these. Oh, Glenn has a very important question and I have a funny feeling you won't like the answer, Glenn. Jackie, I'll ask you this one. I have an exam on the 15th of December. If I am unsuccessful, will I have to sit the new exam in 2021?
Glenn, you have to think positive. You do not want to sit the new exam in 2021. So you may just get your finger out and do twice as hard in terms of study. I'm sorry, but the answer is yes.
Yeah, we're rooting for you, Glenn. You're going to do it. That's going to be.
You're going to do it, Glenn. You're going to do it.
Okay. You're
think positive.
All right. Okay. So I don't think there's a. Yeah, you're going to do it, Glenn. Don't worry about it. You're absolutely going to do it. Okay. So we'll head back into the maintaining certifications now because we'll leave some time at the end for questions as well. So if you think of anything that you want to go back, now's the time. So, ladies, do you want to take it away again? And I'll stop talking.
Thank you, Katrina. So now we're going to look at maintaining certifications. So this is as important as earning the certifications because it's a lot of effort to be able to just pass the test. So it's so much easier to do it again. Exactly, it's so much easier to maintain your certification rather than having to retake the exam, and it's a quite easy way to do it as well. So let's have a look. So in order to maintain your certifications, you need to report PDUs, and PDUs are professional development units, and these are 1-hour blocks of your time that you spend learning or teaching or any activity that will contribute towards your certification. And 1 hour of learning of activity equals to 1 PDU, so that's how we can calculate the amount of PDUs per learning or activity. And by accumulating and tracking these PDUs over the 3-year period cycle, you can maintain your certification status with PMI. And the overall PDU requirements varies between for different certifications, which we will have a look at it later on. And finally on the slide, there's a very important source, which is the Continuing Certifications Requirement Program, the CCR system, which is PMI's online tool for reporting the PDUs, and you can access it at ccrs.pmi.org. So this is where you will record and report all your PDUs. So if you move on to our next slide. So we're going to first look at our talent triangle. I'm sure most of you are quite familiar with this. It's important to just have a recap of the different areas of the talent triangle, as you will need to categorize the PDUs accordingly in the different areas of the talent triangle. So there's 3 areas. These are technical, leadership, and strategic and business management. So the technical area is all about the knowledge and the skill set that is related to that technical aspects of project management, portfolio, and program management. And an example for that could be, for example, risk management or scope management activities, any governance, any planning, scheduling. So any type of technical learning or activities will fall under the technical part of the triangle. And the second one is around the leadership. So this is all about the people skills and knowledge and the skill set around the ability to lead the teams and to guide your team and motivate your team members. An example for that could be the coaching and mentoring sessions, any team building or emotional intelligence type of learning activities will all fall under the leadership part of the triangle. And then finally, we have the strategic and business management. So this is the knowledge and experience around the industry and the organizations in order to achieve and deliver better business outcomes. So examples for that is obviously the benefits management and realization, so any type of learning that you might do, or any industry knowledge, any market awareness, strategic planning type of activities will all fall under the strategic and business management part of the talent triangle. Then if we move on to our next slide. So here we have the overall PDU requirements for PMP, program management, portfolio management, and also the business analysis certification. So over the 3-year cycle, you will need 60 PDUs, and these are categorized within 2 categories. And the first one is education, where you would need a minimum of 35 PDUs. And out of these 35 PDUs, you would need a minimum number of 8 per the different areas of the triangle, which we have covered in the previous slide. So, and once you have 8 per areas of the triangle, then you can allocate the additional PDUs on any of those areas, as long as you satisfy that minimum criteria. And on the right-hand side here, we have the giving back PDUs. So you can claim a maximum of 25 PDUs in this area. And this could be working as a professional, which is equivalent to the time you actively work during the 3-year cycle. And if you were actively working within the 3-year cycle, you can claim a maximum amount of 8. And similarly, that in addition, you can also claim PDUs for any volunteering type of activity or any creating content or knowledge type of activity. You can claim them under giving back PDUs as well. Then if we move on to our next section, so here you can see a similar breakdown for other certifications. So for example, for ACP, RMP, and SP certifications, you would need a maximum of 30 PDU overall. And we have a similar breakdown between the education and giving back PDUs with minimum requirements for the talent triangle of 4 PDUs in this circumstances as well. And then on the right-hand side, you will need 15 PDUs for the CAP-AM, which is introduced recently this year. So this was newly introduced. And you will need education and giving back PDUs as well. And here you also need minimum of 9 education PDUs for the CAP-AM certification as well. So I know that there's a lot of numbers and a lot of minimum and maximum thresholds, but once you log into CCR system, it's quite easy to guide and to see where you need to have PDUs, where you're closer to the minimum amount. It's quite easy because the system guides you through as you enter your PDUs. The system guides you and shows you where you have the gaps and where you reached the maximum threshold. So it's quite easy to see, and you don't need to memorize the different maximum and minimum amounts. But it's good to know that anyway. Okay, then if we move on to our next section, we're going to look at some of the examples that might fall under these categories. The first one is the education PDUs. And an example for that could be any course or training that you might attend. And these could be in-person and virtual courses. For example, any courses that are led by the registered education providers, or any instructor-led e-learning courses, or any education events that the chapter might have, such as the webinars we have. So these can all be claimed as long as they're relevant to your certification. And then similarly, you can claim PDUs for organization meetings. For example, if you attend any educational sessions and any industry conferences or any similar chapter events or any meetings that will focus on the talent triangle and will contribute to your certification as well. So you can claim PDUs for those too. And then you can claim PDUs for any online or digital media. And example for those are the pre-recorded webinars and the podcast and any digital recordings. For example, Katrina circulates the recordings of the webinars, and if you can't make it on the day of the event, then you can watch them on your own time, and you can claim PDUs for those as well. The only difference will be that if you attend it, it will be automatically uploaded for you once you provide your PMI ID. But if you do it on your own time, then you might need to record it manually on the system. But also similarly, you can watch any of the webinars on the projectmanagement.com. There's quite a good resource there, so those will all count as PDUs as well. And then you can also do reading activities, so you can read in books and articles that might be relevant to your certification. And lastly, any informal learning sessions, which could be any, for example, any structured discussions with fellow professionals, or any discussions with your mentor, any mentoring sessions. For example, if you are a mentee and if you have a mentor, then the time you spent with your mentor or your coach you can claim them here as a PDU, as an informal learning. Then if we move on to our next slide, we can have a look at the giving back PDU examples. So the first one we have here is the work as a practitioner. So as I mentioned earlier, so this is the number of PDUs for working as a practitioner to be claimed is depending on the amount of time you worked actively on the profession during the 3-year cycle. So for example, if you have a PMP and if you worked actively in project management professional during those entire 3 years, then you can claim the maximum amount of 8 PDUs. And similarly, say if you have an ACP certification instead, then you can claim the maximum of 4. So it's depending on the time you were actively working during that 3-year cycle. Then another example could be creating content. So if you created if you wrote any articles or created any webinars or any presentations that are again relevant to the certification and the profession, then those can be claimed as a PDU as well. And then similarly, so giving a presentation, for example, if you're speaking in an event or presenting in an event for professional development or any conferences relevant to your certification, so all those the time spent could be claimed as a PDU as well. And the next one is the sharing knowledge. So if you serve as a moderator in a panel discussion or an SME, or if you are maybe acting as a mentor and you have a mentee, for example, so as a mentor, you can claim the time spent with your mentee or your coachee as a PDU under the sharing knowledge PDUs as well. And the last one we have here is the volunteering. So if you're doing any type of volunteering activity, that that contributes to the advancing knowledge in the profession, you can claim that under the giving back PDUs as well. So I hope that these examples could make it a bit clearer for you and just give some ideas in terms of what type of activities or learnings that could count as a PDU. As you can see, there's a wide variety of different activities that can be claimed as PDU. So it's really helpful resource as well. Then if we move on to our next slide. So if you have any multiple certifications, if you have more than one PMI certification, for example, for the giving back PDUs, you can apply all the giving back PDUs across all certifications. So there's no difference there. And similarly for the education PDUs, the leadership and strategic and business management PDUs can be applied across all certifications. The only difference to highlight here is the technical PDUs, as the technical PDUs are dependent on different certifications. So that will differ in terms of, it depends on the certification, it depends on the activity. And we have an example here at the bottom. For example, in the first one, let's say that if you took a 12-hour course on portfolio management with 3 hours spent on risk management specifically, then for PMP, for program management and portfolio management, you'll be able to claim the full 12 hours. However, if you have the risk management professional certification, then you can claim the 3 hours rather than the full 12 hours. So it's depend on your certification and the content. And the second example we have here is similar. So if you took an 8-hour project management course that you spent 1 hour on requirements, 1 hour on risk management, and 30 minutes each on scheduling and agile. So similarly, you can claim full 8 hours for PMP, whereas, for example, for ACP, you can claim that 0.5 for the 30 minutes on agile and 1 hour for risk management, as there is only 1 hour risk management course during this course. So it's depending on the content and your certification. That's where the technical PDUs is where it varies for the PDUs. Okay, then if we move on to, so lastly, we have the audit process. So all certification holders are subject to an audit. So there's a percentage of the certification holders that are randomly selected for PMI's audit process. And if you are selected, you'll be asked to submit supporting material and documentation for the PDUs that you claimed. Therefore, it's important to make sure that you keep the documentation for all your PDU claims and for at least 18 months after the CCR cycle has ended. And the documentation, for example, could be, let's say, any certification that you might have or any confirmation of attendance. You might get an agenda of the meetings or any notes of your learning, or if you prepare a presentation, and the presentation could be a documentation. So any type of documentation that you might have, depending on the activity, it's important to keep them for that minimum 18 months after the cycle has ended. Okay, I think this was the last slide for our maintaining certification. And just one last thing to remind that it's much easier to record your PDUs as you go, and rather than leaving it all at the end, because it might be quite difficult and you might be under time pressure to get all of them sorted. And you might not remember all the activities or the trainings you've taken. So it's much smoother and easier to record as you go, or at least maybe a few times a year or so, rather than leaving it all at the end.
I've definitely left it to the end of 3 years once, so I can concur. It's an absolute nightmare, and then you end up trawling through your old emails and trying to remember which of the meetings that you attended and when did you do that training course and who ran that training course and did you take a copy of that certificate. There's been a few questions, Elif, on audit, so I don't know if anyone, I'm just going to try and scan really quickly. Here we go. I just accidentally scrolled all the way up through them. So Barry actually has a question. So he went to the Pendulum Summit last Friday. So Jackie and Elif, get your calculators out. He went to the Pendulum Summit. The theme was emerging through disruption, mostly focused on business leaders. It was 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. event. And he's asking, he doesn't know if they're a rep for PMI, and I don't know the answer to that either. So is he okay to put in about 5 PDU leaderships for this event? So that's a good question, because that's something that we'll all do. We'll go to these conferences. How much can we reasonably claim?
Okay, so the one thing I would do is say, okay, show me the agenda. What sessions were you at? Like, and what sessions? So you need to be, it is an honor system, but so you need to sort of be honorable in how you're doing it. I would suggest 5 PGUs is too much to claim for it. Because if I saw the agenda, it's 9 to 5. Were you at every single session from 9 to 5? Was there one an introductory? There's probably about maybe 2 or 3, and I might, without seeing the agenda, I don't know. There's probably maybe 2 or 3 hours there that were actually specifically, and what was it on? Was it on business? Was it on, it wasn't on technical project management, so it was probably on leadership and strategy, so I would be putting in the leadership. That bit you're correct. But in order to quantify the number, I would suggest you'd need to objectively look at the agenda and see how many hours was the leadership, how many hours was actually on the leadership. Does that help, Barry, or do you want to ask any more questions about it? If you want to, Barry, I'm more than happy if you want to send me an email with the whatchamacallit, with the agenda, and I can come back to you on it if it's specifically, if you want to, no problem at all.
All good, thanks, Jackie. No, I'm very cautious putting in my hours. It was a good 6 solid, it was really packed. It was 6 solid hours of actual formal leadership meetings. So I'll just stick in 4, probably 4. I'll always underestimate it.
I'd underestimate, like,
Yeah.
what I usually do, Barry, is I use a rule of thumb of, for myself personally, if I look at any of the conferences that I go to, the PMI conferences,
Yeah.
you know, there's only maybe 4 or 5 max that you get PDUs in a day. So I use that as my rule of thumb. But I think you are better erring on the side of caution.
I'll drop it back. I do the same. I normally knock it back to about 7%.
Yeah, I think you're safe doing that. Yeah.
Thanks very much. Cheers.
Not at all. You're welcome.
So look, Jack, a couple of things on the auditing process. It is an audit system, but there are some checks. So, for example, the events such as this one that we run, we log on to a system and I basically say this is what the event is about. It asks me what the learning objectives. So in other words, what do people expect to have out of it at the end of it? And I say then that's going to be half a strategic or half a leadership or one. There is a hard and fast rule about a 1 hour lunchtime webinar, and it's 1 PDU. So you'll never see me give you any more than 1 PDU for these webinars. And I split them then based, and sometimes I'll ask the committee for their opinion if I think something's, so I wasn't sure about this one. So I was like, well, what would I give this one? When I do that, they take it away, and it's fairly quick. It's mostly an automated process. They come back very quickly and they approve it. That means that when you submit it, or if I submit it on your behalf, if you attended the live webinar, and I'll get to that in a second, if you attend the live webinar and you registered with your PMI ID, I will put you into the batch upload and you'll get your PDU. And there's almost no auditing on that because it was pre-audited. So they're trusting me then, and they're relying on me not to give the PDU out to absolutely everybody. So you can really help yourself there by making sure that your PMI ID is included when you register. And it's your PMI ID. It's incredible how it's your PMI ID. It's not a made up number. It's not your email address. It's not your pet name for your dog. It's genuinely look up it's probably a 5 or more digit number. That's the number that you put in, and we take care of it in the batch upload. If you go and you do it yourself afterwards, just go into that CCR link that I will also supply with the emails as well. And I would go back to Elif's point, just get into the habit of doing it regularly, because it's a lot less daunting than when you have to sit down once every 3 years and mildly panic at the fear of having to do the exam again. Now that we've just told you it's changing, just try and do little and often. Also, the last slide that we present on the webinars mostly as well has a couple of other links into projectmanagement.com. And so sometimes we open these webinars up to non-members, but the majority of them are for members only. The archive is for members only, and projectmanagement.com is for members only. So as members, you do get access to a lot of extra knowledge that will get you PDUs as well. And a lot of the projectmanagement.com webinars, if you do those, they will also automatically register the PDU for you. Not all of them, but some of them do. So I'm looking to see if anyone else has any questions on it. Does anyone want to ask a question? Just raise your hand or ask the guys a question. Any specifics? All very quiet. We have, right, thanks. Someone
Katrina?
Yes.
Hi, it's Jackie here. Just one other point to make.
Perfect.
We do have other sources within the PMI.org for PDUs. There is a Projectified podcast that happens, and I understand you can claim PDUs for that as well. And also, it's really important to, particularly in this year, last year and a half, if you watch out on the PMI.org page, they have a COVID-19 hub, and this year particularly they've had a lot of free courses. So in particular, there's probably 2 that are available now for members who are looking, if they're looking for PDUs for certification. One is around continuity planning, which is very relevant in what we're going through in the world today. And the other one is course and change management, and they're both free, and you get 4.5 PDUs for one and 2 for the other, I think. So it's just to constantly go back to PMI.org, because sometimes there's free stuff there too.
So look, I'll actually gather up some of those links from you, Jackie, and I will make sure to include them in some of the future webinar slides as well. So you'll get access to them, and I'll pop them up on the events page as well, because it's all worth it at the moment. Any other questions, guys? While you're thinking about your questions, I'll go through a few reminders. So the AGM is the 15th of December. we are, you're going to get 2 emails. So you're essentially, when you're a member, if you're not a member of the Ireland chapter, you're not going to get these emails. Just that's the couple of guests that we have joining us today. So each member has the right to vote, and we are asking that you exercise the right and sort of get into the habit of getting more involved and understanding what's going on in your local chapter. You're going to get 2 emails, and they're going to come from support@votenet.com, and then the first email will contain the link to the voting platform, and then you'll get a reminder as well. So the new board will be communicated on Tuesday, December 15th. So if you log in, well, you could, if you just go to the PMI Ireland website right now, you can see that we have set up the AGM as a meeting on the 15th of December. And if you're a member, you'll have to log in to get access to that particular one. But if you're a member, you can join the meeting. And I think, Jackie, the vote closes a couple of days before, and then you get the results the day before the AGM. Is that right?
The vote is opening from the 4th of December to the 11th of December. So you have a period of time to vote.
The voting is
As
open on
Katrina
Friday.
said, you'll get an introduction email, and then you'll get a reminder email, and we'll be posting on various websites and stuff to remind people to vote. But once the 11th happens, then the voting is closed, and then the nomination committee will be informed on the 14th of December, and then I'll get an email telling me who are the elected board members.
Okay. So now, if you're all a little bit, wow, putting myself forward to be a board member is probably a bit much. It's not, it's great. Come join us. It's really, really good. But if that's a little bit daunting, there are a good few volunteer opportunities, and they are real volunteer opportunities. Before I joined the board, I volunteered a couple of times for the PMI Ireland chapter, and it really isn't just I'll get a couple of PDUs to do this, and you really will get to do some very interesting things. I once volunteered, and we got to actually write exams for the PMP. So if you want to be that person, and I thoroughly enjoyed it, it was a bit sadistic, that's fun. But for us next year, we've got about 3 or 4 volunteer roles up, including ones to work with me on running the events. And I do mean running the events, so I mean sitting here doing what I'm doing right now, which sounds very glamorous, but I promise you it's not. But it will be a really good chance to get involved in the chapter, understand how the chapter works, and get to network with people as well. So we're going to run a meeting in January where for people who've applied, so we've already had a good few people to apply for these roles. And for if you're thinking about it but you're not sure, come and join the meeting. We'll have it up for registration in the coming days. Come and ask us some questions. We'll talk to you about what the roles involve and what you can get out of them, and what we're looking for from you, because we are like I said, there are some meeting roles that we're looking for people to get involved with us. So you'll get your PDUs for doing it, but you'll also make a difference to the Ireland chapter of the PMI, which hopefully is something that is very worthwhile. And it could then give you the introduction into, well, you know, maybe taking on a position on the board is something as well. So think about your career progression. We had a chapter meeting just a couple of weeks ago about managing your career progression. So networking is really important, and it really is part of what it takes to fill out your CV.
So Katrina, just on that, Katrina, if anyone on the call, I've just seen 1 or 2, if anyone on the call is interested in volunteering, what should they do?
Well, they can come to well, first of all, you can go directly to this link here, so that you can actually click that link, and that will be in the email that I'll send out after the meeting. You can have a look at the roles that we have set up particularly for the Ireland chapter. You can come to the meeting in January, which we'll set up for registration in the next couple of weeks, and you can basically ask us specifically about the roles and what's involved in them. You can also, by the way, when you go to volunteering, there are global volunteering opportunities as well, not just in the Ireland chapter, but of course we're encouraging you to volunteer.
We want them in the Irish chapter first.
The Irish chapter. So,
Katrina,
Jackie.
It's the other Jackie here. Just to mention, just in terms of volunteering, very often what people can use volunteering for is, you know, maybe they're, you know, and particularly relevant in post-COVID, because, you know, maybe there's a reluctance to move on if you're in an organization where your job is secure, but you'd like to get some more experience. I've seen over the years as I've volunteered, and I've seen other people volunteering, where they're using a volunteer opportunity to gain some experience that they can't quite get in their work domain at that point in time. So there are 2 huge opportunities that we have every year, which are the national awards and the the national conference, and we have those positions filled for next year. But they're the kind of things that if you're looking for a wider reaching role, that are available for people to volunteer for. So it's worth considering about, are you getting where you need to in your work environment, and if you aren't and you identify some gaps, can they be filled by volunteering? Because it's a very useful way of gaining skills as well.
Thanks, Jackie. It's a very good point, and it is so there's a lot going on, and we do hope to get back to face-to-face events. And you just heard Jackie mention there that we are trying to plan a national conference for next year as well. So
yes,
spoiler alert, more on that as we progress. So I'm still looking. So if anyone sees any questions, shout. But this is the usual slide that I end on. So I'll take some of Jackie's feedback on board there, and I'll add a couple of extra links into the Projectified podcast and any other basically any other connections that we have that we can get you some opportunities to earn PDUs. So this is my top tip. You have no idea how hard it makes my life if you don't register with your PMI ID. And I'm not being funny, and this is because of GDPR, and this is deadly serious. I have no facility to look up your PMI ID because GDPR means that I only can have what you give me yourself when you register. So when you put in the wrong PMI ID and it looks alarmingly like a PMI ID, that totally throws the entire batch out as well. So if you can do one thing of kindness for me, and it can be your Christmas present to me, please look up your PMI ID and use it when you're registering. When you attend the webinars, I auto-register you essentially. And then you get that nice email and it tells you that it's been done. If there's problems with it, it probably tells you that too, but so that's my only ask. So for this one, because we went with technical, because it was sort of like the machinations of how your PDU works. So for just following on line with what Elif and Jackie did, we have you get one, and it will cover across pretty much every single one of the certification types. So you'll be entitled to one PDU. So that's it for me. I think Bernard has asked a question. I'd be very interested in getting more information on the mentoring and working as a professional. So Elif, you might want to actually speak about the mentoring since you just concluded a pilot program in the Ireland chapter.
Yes, that's true. Thanks, Katrina. So we just concluded our mentoring pilots for 6 months, and we're gathering our feedback at the moment, and we're looking to relaunch the next phases in the coming year as well. But in terms of the mentoring PDUs, for example, in your organization, or if there's any other, if you attended the PMI mentoring program, for example, if you are a mentor, if you're a coach to another colleague, then the time you spent with your mentee or your coachee, you can claim them as a PDU. So let's say if you have a 1 hour meeting with your mentee, you can claim it as a PDU, or vice versa. If you are the mentee or the coachee, then the time you spent with your mentor or coach can all be claimed for PDU. And the working as a professional. So let's say if you have a PMP, and if you worked actively in the profession during the 3-year cycle, then you can claim the maximum amount, which is 8 PDU for that. So if you were actively working as a, let's say, project manager role, then you can claim the maximum 8 PDU for the PMP. And if you have an ACP certification instead, then the maximum amount for that is 4 PDU. So again, then you can claim 4 PDU if you were actively working for 3 years. Or if you are actively working, let's say 50% of that time, then you should claim 2 PDUs. So it's in parallel with the time you spent actively working during that 3-year cycle period.
Elif, can you hear me? It's Bernard speaking.
Yeah.
Hi, Bernard.
Thank you so much. Just want to clarify that because I'm doing consultancy at the moment as a program manager, and I'm coaching and mentoring a number of junior PMs within the organization. But how would I prove that? What do I need to write something up then to say X number of hours, or how would you record that?
Yeah.
So in terms of documentation, for example, for our mentoring program, what we recommended is that if you had, let's say, if you have an agenda for those sessions or any points that you want to cover, you can then you can save that, or if there's any notes from the session, any timing, the dates and the timing of your sessions with your mentees, so you can record those as well. So so you just need to have that information, the detailed information of that time spent with your mentee. Is there anything else, Jackie, you would like to add on?
Yeah, it was just that probably the easiest thing would be, Bernard, if you did a meeting invite and it had mentoring and it had, so if you held that as in your records, that would be proof of it.
Great. Jackie, thank you so much, Anila, for that. Thank you.
No, you're welcome.
Actually, that's a very
And
good
you're on
point.
our list for the next session.
Yeah.
Thank
Jackie,
you.
that is a very good point, actually, is to use your calendar to put things in when you did them, and maybe give them a name like, you know, PDU or something, so that you can go and search your calendar for them. But that's another lesson I learned after having to dig through 3 years of emails.
Well, that's very good. Thank you so much.
Not at all. You're very welcome.
So Glenn, I've just sent you, Glenn has asked me a question specifically about his PMI and his access, so I will pass it on to Clive to answer it. It's just having issues accessing the membership only content, but he is a member.
Okay.
So we'll get the guys onto it. Okay, so I have no more questions. Jackie or Elif, would you like to say a final word? Or Jackie, the two Jackies are with us today before we sign off.
Probably no, but the one thing probably, and I'll
Probably no,
short,
but
I get slagged, everybody, because I never know when to shut up, but that's not true. Maybe it is. So, but what I want to say is, I would actually hold, when Katrina sends out this is like a sort of a snapshot of, Elif's done a great job in putting a snapshot of all the information together. If you know, and if you've looking around the PMI.org website, there's buckets of information, but sometimes it's very hard to try and find it. So this, in terms of your PDUs and the exam and everything else, and the different accreditations, this is like a one-stop shop. So I would suggest to you to save it into your own file folder somewhere, so that it's for ease of reference. And just to re-emphasize what Katrina had said about the AGM, we're really under Jackie's banner, and we're really trying to reach out to the membership, and so we need feedback, guys, if we're reaching, if what we're doing. Jack, I don't know if you want to add on to that.
Yep.
Please give us feedback, like we're here to serve you guys.
So just on that note, really great job tonight, ladies. It's great to have you on the board. It's an absolute pleasure working with you guys. Great session. As Jackie says, it's a snapshot of point in time. We will continue through our newsletters where we see anything. You've probably seen some posts from me this year through the newsletter where there's free stuff available, because that's the most, I often get emails from people, you know, that I know in my network, and they'll ask me, oh my God, I forgot to do XYZ. What can I do? What can I do? And usually, like, it's very easily sorted out. But to the lady's point, do it as you go. It's much better. This year we are doing electronic voting due to the circumstances. We will be having our AGM. Please vote. Please attend the AGM. Exercise your right. And following the AGM in early January, we'll certainly be doing a survey to our members. And I really ask you to participate, because, as Jackie said, we're here to serve you. We're not for profit, and we've really worked hard this year to try and, you know, provide a good, you know, array of webinars and knowledge base for people so they can continue to evolve in their career. So please, we would appreciate if you did respond to the survey in January to help us out, and hope to see you at our AGM on the 15th of December.
Thanks, Jackie. So guys, I'm going to wrap it up there. To come to our usual end, it's not been a webinar this time, it's been a meeting, which we plan to do more of next year. So hopefully always come back to us in the survey, even just reply to the events email and give us your feedback. I do read them. You probably know, because you all get replies from me as well. So, okay, so before we close out, as usual, we will register your PMI, your PDU for you if we have your PMI. Otherwise, it's just a simple two-step process to register it yourself, and you'll have all the slides. So I'll send the usual email back to everyone that registered, and you'll get the PDF copy. So you'll have all the links that Elif and Jackie went to the trouble of collating for you. As Jackie said, it makes it easy for you to find them. So hopefully we will see you all at the AGM, but we have about, I think, outside of the AGM, we've 3 more webinars and panel discussions coming up, which Jackie Fagan will join us back for in December. So the one just...
And I will be talking, so...
Jackie Fagan, we might just get her to wear a Santa hat for that one.
Okay, you're on, I will.
All right, that's it. Okay, guys, thanks very much for joining us. If you'll get the comments anyway, you'll get people's access. Send us an email if you do have a question about anything. And don't forget, networking is important. So link in with everybody and build your network, essentially. Thank you very much for your time. Thanks to Jackie Fagan, Jackie Glynn, and Elif. We really appreciate the time you put into this. And we will actually talk to you again once more this week on Friday for our next webinar. So
thanks a million, Katrina.
Thanks, Katrina.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you. Thanks, everyone.
Cheers.
Lovely
Bye.
to speak to people. So thanks very much.